All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, we're good. Are we live?
we're good. We're live.
I love that. Welcome, everybody. It's Wadih Wednesday, and today we are going to talk about the continued part two of assimilation. And what does assimilation mean within our cultural context? This live is going to be primarily for people Arab living in the diaspora. Now, with that said, those of you that may be living in your home countries or living a life that may not be in accordance to all the rules of your home country, you may also feel it very difficult to assimilate within these environments. So, we're going to talk about part two is about tips and how to overcome that. One thing I did want to say before we dive too deep is number one, own your in between identity. Number two, maintain the language, even if imperfect. Number three, recreate the community you miss. Number four, heal the too Arab, not Arab enough sting. Number five, keep cultural joy loud. Number six, prepare soft comebacks to microaggressions. And number seven, stay connected to homeland stories. All right. Welcome, everyone that's joining. Really appreciate it. I'm going to let Mira take over. She's my amazing assistant here at Community for International Arab. She runs the show and she's going to go over some Yalla news.
Yeah, Yellow News is just a few ground rules that we go through every Wadah Wednesday. And this Wadah Wednesday, as Tiffany just said, is going to be the part two from the Cost of Assimilation. But we do take questions. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments of the live, and I'll make sure to let Tiffany know about them. But please be patient because we are streaming on different platforms. So it might take us a little time, but we're going to get to you. And if you want to watch any of the full lives, the part one is on YouTube. So just go to the link in the bio. You're gonna see it on YouTube. And as Tiffany always says, what doesn't apply, let it fly. So please, let's help us keep this community a safe place, a positive place, and let's just try to heal and grow together, and not just put any negativity in the comments that is unneeded. And yeah, that's all I have.
Mira, thank you so much. Yes. One of the things that's so important for us to remember as a community is that there's already so much division that we truly want to be able to listen to one another, especially when it comes to uh, Arab living in the diaspora. There is so much, and I get comments all the time to west, to east, whatever. To me, that does not matter to this community. If it matters to you, I'm going to encourage you, hop off the live. This platform is not going to be for you. You will suffer throughout this whole life. So let's not create more suffering and create more peace. All right. So, for those of you that are new to this community, my name is Tiffany Tota. I am a marriage and family therapist over 20 years here in the United States. I was born Palestinian American, and that what comes with that is the blending of the two cultures, being Palestinian and Americania, and also with the understanding that, which I'll share a story about my mom. She came to the United States when she was 5 years old. So remembering her experience. So each of your families, as we start to talk about this live, think about your family and your family's story, their immigration stories. And there's so much information for you to be able to lean into. Now, one thing I can say well, let's kind of check in real quick for the Arab in the diaspora. Where are you guys? So I'm Palestinian American. Mira, I know you're in Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody want to share if you're Syrian and UAE? Welcome. Now, if you live in the UAE, is that your home country? Welcome, Iraq. Now, for those of you that are living in different countries, is that your home country? And if it's not your home country, I'd say we have Lebanon in the house. We've got Morocco. We have a Emirati. Yes, Tunisia. Welcome. Let's see. Just taking a look at the live here. Anybody that lives out in the diaspora? Oh, we have Australia. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We have Palestine Canadian, Syrian American. It's on Instagram.
Oh, on Instagram. Oh, thank you. Thank you for reading those. I'm looking at TikTok right now. Okay. Nice. All right, here we go. Well, let's get started. I know growing up, living in the United States, it was almost a surreal experience. And I don't know if people felt this way. It was like you were grown from like grape leaves, right? So much embedded in our fabric of our being. But then, like, you know, we're all about Target, right? And Target's a major retailer out here, which I think is it on the boycott list. I don't know. I can't keep up. But my point is, it's almost like we had so much of our Arab, and in my case, Palestinian in our DNA that, but yet we loved baseball and we loved so many things that were also American. Now, I think assimilation, I've thought about this a lot. I think it hits differently for Arab in the sense because many of us, culture just isn't a hobby, right? People can say, "Oh, we're going to assimilate into this particular." For us, our culture is about family hierarchies, religion, language, food, community reputation, Teta judging you through FaceTime angles all rolled into one, you see? And so when you think about the impact on you, what happens to you when you, what happens to you when you start to change or needing to shift? What emotional impact has that had on you? So I'm asking those of you that are on the live, what impact has assimilation done to you? Given how much our culture is so embedded in us, yet you're a part of a country that also can be a part of you. What are some feelings or thoughts that come up around that for people? Mira, anybody? I know, maybe I'll start. I was confused. There were moments I was so angry with my Arab family because they wouldn't let me go out. I wasn't able to do other things that American kids were able to do. I felt resentful. Marwa, you wrote lost. You felt lost. I love that. Right. There's like a disorientation. And I love that. Yes. So I want to validate that for you. I don't think as a culture trapped. Yep. I love that. You feel like you can't be free to be who you are because you have to look a certain way and act a certain way so the aunties and the can be comfortable. And then here you see your friends in their freedom of expression and in their trying different things and wearing different things. And you're like, well, why can't I do that? La ihna la. How many times did I hear that? La inti. Ihna mish hek. I go, okay, mish hek, tell you. But when you're a kid and you're seeing all your peers do that, you can feel isolated. How many of you have felt isolated growing up in these environments? And then you go back to your Arab families and you may feel even more isolated because you don't necessarily understand what they're saying either. So I'll share a story about my mom, which this live will be dedicated to her because she and I have had long conversations about what being Falastini and being American means. She came to the United States at the age of 5. She talked about back then, you could say Palestinian, unlike my generation, when there was the TWA flights that occurred. And so we were known as terrorists. However, her experience growing up in the United States was she could say Palestinian. Her English in reading and writing was excellent because for Palestine at that time, she went to a Quaker school where they were taught by people from Germany and they people from I forgot how many countries, but there was people that would go and teach the girl at the girls' school for Palestine. Okay, fine. So when she came to the United States, she said that she read better than her American counterparts. And the teacher would skip over her and then my mom would raise her hand saying, "Hey, I want to read." And the teacher would say, "Didn't you just come from a new country? Didn't you just come from another country?" How many of you have experienced being in the diaspora where your English may be better than most people you're sitting with, and yet you felt shame because maybe I hear this a lot from Arab that maybe you have an accent or maybe you didn't say the words exactly the way they needed to be said, and then you shamed yourself. So growing up, my mom always felt she wanted to take the good from the Arabi culture and take the good from the American culture and blend them. And that's the greatest gift she had given me is to say, there's so many. That's when I talk about the strengths of the Arab culture. She instilled that. Yet she was also very aware and very clear that there were things in the Arab culture that needed to change, things she couldn't relate to, the rigidity around some of their viewpoints, how they would dismiss the ills of what may be going on in our community. And then she would speak on it and then became the problem. So the reason why I share this story is because your parents' immigration stories are very important for you to learn and understand because there may be things in there that you can use. Now, if your parents sent you to another country for education, or if they sent you to for university or any of these things, I want you to remember that they may be so afraid that you might change or leave them, and that may keep you from fully integrating. And in fact, forget about the integration, taking full advantage of what these countries can give you. And it's interesting. I was talking to a couple of my friends yesterday, and we talked about how growing up, we felt ashamed to take advantage of what was happening in our companies. We didn't take full advantage of the benefits. Maybe the younger generation is different, I hope, because we did not want to show them that we were taking when this was our right to be able to uh, take pleasure in all of the things that this country is afforded. So let's go into how you could do this. So when I talk about own your in-between identity, what does that mean to you? You're not half of anything. You are double, and you're both. And when I say that, it's maybe you're double the humor, you're double the history, you're double the essence of both countries that you live in. The mix, something for you to remember, is not a flaw. The mix that you have can be the very strength to evolve your life and to capitalize on your life in ways that can be very meaningful to you. I can tell you that I have seen in corporate settings here in the United States that Arab women, they're talented, smart, perfectionists, which is a plus or minus, right? Hardworking, and they are put together to the nines. They look good from head to toe because in our culture, how we represent ourselves is very important. And so in these corporate settings, what the more capable they were, the more they did, the more jealousy ensued by people outside of, that they were surrounded themselves with. So what did that mean? Particularly female leadership, for all this talk we have in the United States around women empowerment, I find more often than not women leaders putting down, in this case, Arab women for excelling and minimizing promotions and moving them into leadership skills. I mean, leadership positions. Now, the reason why I mention this to you is because you want to honor your hard work, but you also have to remember that how you move and who you are, or the shape of your beautiful almond eyes, I'm telling you, we are not as advanced here in the United States as people may assume. They will feel some kind of way about you. And then on top of that, you bring the delicious cookies, you're cooking, you're generous, you're bringing all the beauty of our culture into these corporate settings. And then what's going to happen? They're going to resent you. Not only are they going to resent you, they may manipulate you to say, you might get that promotion. And they're going to keep giving you the carrot and the stick, which very much mimics our family environments. So I digressed. So when it comes to this assimilation, this honoring your in-between identity, I want you to understand that there may be consequences for that. And how do you protect yourself in that? And to say, I have both, and honor your hard work and get the pay that you want. Ask for the promotions. Now, you may not get it. That's not the point. The point is that you feel worthy enough and deserving enough to ask for those things because you have both in you. Your identity gives the best of both worlds, but most people are too limited to even embrace that. So instead of embracing it, they're going to shun it. Now, those of us in the diaspora maintaining Arabic language, I know when I've tried to speak Arabic, I'm at the point where it's very broken. People will shame you. Our own culture will shame you for trying to speak Arabic. I know I would try to speak Arabic. I was made fun of. Shu yani inti, right? Look at how you're speaking Arabic instead of teaching me or saying, Habibti, oh my God, that's so nice that you're trying to learn Loghitna. What do they say? Our culture will shame you for that. So if you have relatives that come from the United States or come from Australia or come from Australia or the UK or wherever they're coming from, and they're trying to speak to you in Arabic or they're trying to learn the language, I cannot express to you how much shame we hold within us around not knowing the language. Now, it's not about blaming our parents. My parents wanted to ensure that we were safe. Now, I grew up in the 70s. That immigration assimilation was part of their safety. It was part of their progress. Not that they weren't proud, but sometimes we have to do things for our survival. And yet, those abroad, those living in our home countries, to shame us for that, and then to put us down. How is that unity? How is that bringing us together as a culture? And then, oh, you're too Americanized. Into بتعرفوش Arabi. Well, we were surviving. My parents were surviving in this country. Just as you were surviving تحت occupation, which is no comparison, and it's apples and oranges, but we were all trying to survive. Can we honor our survival? And so for those of us in the diaspora, language is also our emotional glue. It's what brings us together. So when you hear somebody say, yalla, yalla, you're like, oh, there's our people. And that brings us connected. Or when you hear somebody speaking Arabi, and I know I've seen people abroad, and I will say, "Oh, inter Arabi," and then it creates a connection, and maybe it decreases some of their loneliness. So maintaining language, even if it's imperfect. I speak Arabic here. Mira can attest to that, right, Mira? I'll speak Arabi and it will be totally broken. She goes, Tiff, that's not how you say it, right? Here's how you say it. And I'm like, I'm just going to say it anyway, right? Now, many of us have to remember, please do not ridicule your families that come visit. Do not ridicule them if they're trying to speak Arabic. Teach them. Let's bridge that gap. Number 3, when you're living abroad, a lot of times you have to recreate the community you miss. Now, some of you immigrate to, I don't know, Missouri, right? Or you immigrate to Indiana here in the United States, maybe not a huge Arab population. You may be the only Arab in the area. And it's how do you recreate the community you may miss? You can't walk to your aunt's house anymore, or go to your cousin's house, or go to the local store that everybody gathered at. That sense of community, that now you're saying, I have nobody around me. What do I do with that? And so you may want to start up, where do you find people now with the internet? It's much easier. You can find your community members. You can go to your local Mediterranean restaurant. Many times you can always find our people with food, right? And you want to perhaps create a monthly way of keeping it within the culture. Now, I know there's lots of organizations you can join, and so find them and be a part of them. The beautiful thing about Arab professional groups or immigrant groups, or you can find them. And I encourage you, isolation affects your emotional health. So try not to stay too isolated. Now, if you can't find people within our culture, or maybe you want to get away from the culture, well, that's fine too. Then find the community that you're going to feel safe with and feel good with. All right. One thing that we loved growing up, we grew up with, there was only a few Arab families in the neighborhood that I lived in. And, we brought our traditions to our neighbors. So if it was Easter or Christmas, we would bring the desserts, or we would bring the things, and we would show them what this has meant to us. We had very dear friends who were Muslim, and they would also host Eid. They would talk to us about Ramadan. They shared in even for our neighbors, all the neighbors, we shared in these traditions together, and we learned from one another. And so this is where you may want to host Eid or Ramadan iftar for your friends. And it's okay to show them your traditions. More often than not, when people are curious and they want to learn, they love that. And so do not be afraid to show these things. Okay. Now, the next one thing we need to heal from big time is healing where you're too Arab or not Arab enough stink, because that's a dynamic you will never get out of. You are you, and that's all that matters. And like I said, you are both. And so if you're insecure that you didn't come from there or come from here, that could be profoundly disorienting. So don't worry about being too Arab or not Arab enough. That game you will lose every time. So, can you just be you and let you define your identity rather than letting society or relatives do that for you? That's the number one thing I see in anxiety, intense anxiety, is because you can't fit here, you can't fit there. You're trying to mold yourself. You're like, there was a toy Gumby, you were like stretched and pulled in all these different directions. Do not do that to yourself. Heal from that. I'm not Arab, I'm not enough. And you're going to heal that by owning who you are and saying, what am I insecure about? What am I fearing? Am I afraid that they might shun me? And within our cultural context, yeah, they might. I don't mince that. You being who you are, you may become an outcast, and that's terrifying, because so much of our that fabric within us is belonging. So to heal, I say heal gently, heal quietly, and find your community around that. Because until you can own who you are and whatever that means to you, you're going to be lost the rest of your life, the rest of your journey. So start now if you can. One thing is keeping cultural joy loud. So I know out here, whenever I hear, usually it's the Shabab, they'll play their Arabi music really loud, and we'll be in the car next to them. We're all like, yeah, jamming out with them. And this is where it also creates a connection that we do not need to be afraid to belly dance in our living room or blast Feiruz in traffic. My daughter, who's almost 18, she was playing Feiruz in the morning, and I said, she says, Mom, I just feel like it's connected to me. This is where we play it loud, and she shares it with her friends. She goes, look at this song by Nancy Ajram, right? And her friends love it. They're like, ooh, that's fun. And they start doing the dancing. And this is connection. This is assimilation. This is about sharing. Not one is better than the other. This is about community. Making manaish on a Sunday just because. I had a friend, her name was Lana, Allah yarhamha. She and I don't cook Arabi food at all. And the only thing she would be able to make was manaish, right? So she'd get the little she'd get the dough, and she would do the olive oil and the za'atar, and she'd put it together, and we would feed our kids the manaish. And we were so proud of ourselves. We're like, look, we can make manaish. And that brought us so much joy to be able to do that. Joy, and this is something it's really important for everyone to understand. It is in our joy that is resistance. We say our culture is fading. It's not fading. It's in our joy that we embrace all parts of ourselves. If you are not living in your joy, and you're in another country and you're not taking advantage of what's there or finding community because you're so upset about being away, and you're away from your joy, that's going to take away from you. It's going to take away from our culture. So the more we can live in our joy and be in who we are, just by that is resistance. Especially to me as a Palestinian, I say, you guys aren't going to take away our joy. You're not going to take away who we are as a people. This is who we are. And when I show up in a corporate environment, yeah, this is who I am. And what I love about the movements now and the young people, we can actually say Palestinian. There was a time where we wouldn't dare. And the fact that things come around, but it's in who we are and our existence and owning it that we can preserve our cultures. How are we doing on time, Mira? Oh, no, I can't hear you.
Now you can?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, so we only have one question related to the topic. It's from Barzan on TikTok. He said, or she said, were the Americans nice to you when you were growing up?
Marzan, thank you for asking because this leads to the next topic, which is microaggressions. Were they nice? Now, this was something my mom and I talked about. My mom is very fair skinned, light eyes. Assimilation for her because she looked racially ambiguous, meaning nobody knew where she was from. I mean, what does an Arab look like anyway, right? Because of this melting pot, that we were treated okay because nobody knew that we were Palestinian or that we were Arab. Now, once they found out, well, that's when the microaggression started. Oh, are you a terrorist? That was the number one thing. Now, as a child, you didn't have the comebacks. You didn't know what to say. You're like, no, no, of course not. No, my family, no, we're not terrorists, right? And then, of course, there's these political contexts that you're a kid. You don't understand. I mean, even as an adult, do we really understand everything? Where it was very shameful. Like we internalized some of that shame. So were they nice? Some were. Most weren't. And so that's challenging. Or I would get people say real wild things like, oh, you speak English so well. What? Right? Oh, well, so do you. All right. So the reality is more often than not, when you're Arab and you live abroad, you're going to hear, well, you don't look Arab. And I would say to people, I don't know, what's an Arab supposed to look like? Where are you really from? Born and raised in the United States. And people will say, where are you really from? What do you mean? I'm from San Francisco, right? And so, again, taking a look at what happens to you when these microaggressions occur. How do you feel when they say, where are you really from? And you were born in the country where you were at. Sometimes that can feel, I don't know, sometimes I felt like I'm an American. And in fact, in ways, I'm more American than I am Palestinian because I've been here for so long that if you were to take me to go live back home, that would be a huge culture shock for me. Let's see. You get comments like, do you how come you're not wearing the cover, they would say, right? All these things. Can you date? How does your husband feel about you working? What? I mean, the myth that Arab women are these helpless trophies, right? Is awful in some of these countries. You must be Muslim, right? And I explained to people that there are Arab Christians, Muslims, Jews, Druze, atheists, agnostics. I know, shocking. I know. And I tell people, so not all Arab are Muslim. Because for many Christians, Jews, Druze, atheists, agnostics, not that there's anything wrong, but it's this assumption. And then you also feel isolated from that. Your identity also gets erased when people make these assumptions. This one, I don't know if this is common nowadays, but we used to get, is your family rich? Do you have oil money? Is that common? Am I dating myself? Is that like a 1970s microaggression? Anybody? Do you have oil money? We used to get that a lot. We said we only wish we had oil money. So again, going back to Barzan's question around were Americans nice to you? Well, we had some privileges of looking racially ambiguous. We had the privilege of having parents that had been living in the United States for a long time who also assimilated. And so it was a different experience. Now, that might not have been that for you. So this is where you need to take a look at that. Okay. Let's see. Should we go to some questions before I move on?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we have Bintroha, not sure about the name, but she said it's on Instagram. She said how to navigate the constant assumption that I'm Jewish. No matter what I say, people try to connect with me as I'm Jewish.
I don't even know. I need a little bit more context, but part of it is people are going to assume all kinds of things about you. They're going to project onto you so much. Even within our own family context, we get a lot of projection and assumptions. You navigate it again by being so clear in your identity. It does not matter what anybody says to you, that you can say, I don't need to answer that. You can navigate it by saying, oh, okay, you're assuming I'm Jewish. I'm not sure where that came from for you. And you just reflect it back to them. Wow, what's coming up for you? Wow, that's interesting. You would make these assumptions. And I would say, and I would tell people, what do you guys think of Adabar? We are like the biggest melting pot of everything. So your assumptions is showing your ignorance. I try not to match that energy because I want to move in the world where we find connection and you stay curious. God, I'm curious why you would think I was Jewish. Not that anything is wrong with that. But what's coming up for you that you would assume that? So you bring it back to them. But if you don't have that sense of grounding in who you are, that's going to be very difficult to do. So that's why at the beginning of the live, I talked about that's where you need to start, is getting clear in who you are and the fullness of who you are. So whether you're in America, Canada, Australia, or you're in your home country of Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, it doesn't matter. You're going to be grounded in you, not in the assumptions, not in the projections.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the other thing that we get a lot as far as this assimilation in microaggressions, and I only have a couple more, but I think it's important for us to show you, because sometimes we minimize the things that are said to us. We dismiss things. How many times have we dismissed so many comments? But they infantilize our home countries, our homelands. I know I've had that experience. Do you guys still have arranged marriages? Do women drive over there? I was like, you can always ask Google. You don't need to ask me. And the other thing is this infantilizing of our homelands. I think I work with a lot of people from Africa, Ghana, and they have similar experiences of this infantilizing of the homelands. You guys have running water. And these are corporate settings with their inclusion and diversity and equity, all these programs. Yet what I always tell companies is it's not, you can have all the policies you want. It's how do you help the people to reflect on where these assumptions come from? You have to start there, not these programs. Well, I mean, they're fine. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't cancel me or cancel me. It doesn't matter. So where you're reducing culture also to conflict. So what do you think about the wars? Not every Arab majored in Middle Eastern politics. When people talk about the constant wars, I would say, well, why don't you take a look at the US's backyard? We're the cause of 99% of the destruction in the Middle East. Don't look to me to give you the answers. Go look to our elected officials to give you the answers. But again, I'm very clear in I don't need to, and I even say this to Arab too. There are think tanks, the most brilliant minds in the Middle East that can't even figure any of this out. So you're going to ask me about Middle Eastern politics? Do not be afraid to tell people, I would like us to focus on the good of what our culture brings to this world, right? Versus reducing it to constant conflict, because that is not who we are. But this is the blanket in which we are seen in. And how can you minimize that by calling people out on that? Saying, don't look at our countries, look in your own backyard. The one thing that I would really encourage every young person to do living in the diaspora is stay connected to your homeland stories. Ask your parents and grandparents how they grew up, what they loved, what they fought for. There is nothing more powerful. When I was talking to my mom or talking to my teta, Allah yarhamha, when she was alive, and talking about their experiences, I realized, and I said this to my friend Grace yesterday as I was preparing for this live, I said, Grace, my teta was a cycle breaker. My mom, in her own way, was a cycle breaker. And here I am, a cycle breaker. But had I not asked them their stories, my tete ran away from my grandfather. She had 3 small children. She went from Palestine, like they were in Palestine, and she went to Jordan. She didn't want to endure his abuse anymore. And I said, Teta, you left? She goes, I did, Teta. I said, how did you do that back then? She goes, I just did. I didn't want that life anymore. Of course, her family forced her to go back, which, for survival or for whatever cultural reasons that at that time or even now. And she went back, and she endured in spite of everything she had gone through, she still found so much joy. That story always stuck with me. She left with 3 small children back then. Wow. My grandma's a badass. And I thought that's running in the fabric of who I am. My mother, who constantly was pushing the envelope around how she dressed. She was very stylish. She broke cultural norms by just dressing how she wanted and being who she was. And she got a lot of pushback for that. She didn't care. She still kept going. And I thought, and that's where the younger generation, some of my age group would say, man, we always admired your mom for like how she was. And I told my mom that. So I'm telling you these things because when you can ask them, you may be so angry with them and you may not understand that, but when you ask them about their stories, those stories may have meaning to you in how you survive in these countries, how you survive in the diaspora, because they survived horrible, horrible things, which they don't even remotely talk to you about. But get curious. All right. Mira, how are we doing?
We have a question. It's on Instagram. I hope they tell me the name because I've been finding it really hard to read it. It's free and then Adum. I'm not sure. But it says, do you have any suggestions on how to move forward when your parents don't and never have spoken to you about their upbringing and stories, even when you ask?
Yes. They shut down more often than not for a reason, because it is probably very painful for them. So if you cannot find your parents, my sense is you may have an aunt or an uncle somewhere in the background dying to tell you stories. And so, or even your father's friend or your mother's close friends, they may be the holders of those stories. Now, they may not be your parents' story. However, they may be able to give you insight into your mom and dad that you never have realized. So I will definitely encourage you, don't push your parents. I know when I was talking to my grandmother about our lineage, my grandfather was seething. Now, you know what seething is. Now, because I was in Milsan, he knows Anabajawib. He stayed quiet because I think on some level he respected my feistiness, even though he never tolerated it in other people, because I was grounded again in who I was. But my point to that is sometimes they get angry because they have to face things that have been hidden. They have to face traumas that they endured. Yet my grandmother was very forthcoming in sharing all these stories. And I thought, oh, my whole existence made sense as she walked me through the lineage. And it may make sense to you, but with your parents, the traumas may be too great. But you may ask them gentler questions like, what was their favorite thing to eat? What did they like to do? What were some things that they remember? Now, sometimes Arab parents can be very harsh. They're like, "Ay, ishi, wala ishi," nah, right? They get very dismissive and sometimes aggressive around that. And you say, "Oh, that's okay. I was just curious because I really like this, and I was curious if you did too when you were little." And then that's how you foster connection. And if they don't want that connection, I get it. They may not be ready, but find the people in your community that may be ready.
I think we've answered the questions that are related to the topic. So if anyone has any questions that are related, please let us know.
Okay, great. So this is a big one that I don't think we do enough here is please let yourself grieve. I hear so many stories where allow yourself to miss your homeland, the humor, the chaos, the warmth, all of it. Let yourself grieve. Homesickness means you come from something worth missing. Let me say that again. Homesickness means you come from something worth missing. And so if you can give yourself uh, space to grieve and then to create connection in the home country, that may be helpful. And then you ask yourself, what am I grieving? And then once you identify what you're grieving, then you try and recreate that in your home country, which is what so many of our families did. My tete would share a story when she first came. They moved into a predominantly Latino neighborhood in the United States. Her first words she goes, Tiffany, wallahi, my first 3 words for America can pan, queso, leche. And she starts laughing, right? Bread, cheese, and milk. And she goes, my first words can españoli, bitcool. And she loved it. And her Latino neighbors really helped, that they were looking for I forgot a certain item to make an Arabi food, and the Latinos would say, "Oh, this might be it," and they would help to bridge that. They helped to bridge that in helping them create Arab foods, and that was a wonderful story. But how many stories can we capitalize on that again versus our differences? But this is where that homesickness that you feel. My grandmother, instead, she was grieving the loss of mohiyya, for instance, until they were able to find it, and they found replacements. So it's transmuting that grief into resilience, and in creating the life that you want here and in your home country. And you could do that. The other last 2 points I'm going to say is seek culturally aware support. Now, therapists, coaches familiar with Arab families, we know there's not that many. And that code switching fatigue I talked in the last live last week, it's exhausting, and you may need support. The generational trauma. You may have left your home country as a result of significant trauma. Now you're in a new country where you feel like you don't belong. You don't belong in your home country. You don't belong here. That's traumatic. And so, and that identity friction with family expectations can be profoundly challenging. And so you want to see culturally aware support. And that's where we have the Arab Therapist Directory. We have the videos that we have here. So we're trying to build to fill that gap, it's we're really trying to help support you guys in that. And then the last one is build a future that blends both worlds. Build your future that blends both worlds, the strength of both places where you are from. Your children can have Arabic and English. They can have Eid and Christmas. Now, I know for those of faith that could be too much. The Muslim family we grew up with, they had the best Christmas lights, the best tree, and all that. It doesn't mean they were any less. They wanted their children to participate in all of it. And nobody shamed them for that. In fact, till this day, I think they have the best lights, And why can't the children have that? They didn't want their children to feel separated. Or even for Jewish families, when the children want a Christmas tree, or if they wanted presents outside of Hanukkah, give your children assess. But when you tell your children, no, that's not who we are, that's not how we are, this is where children can feel more isolated, more alone, and guess what? Resentful of the culture. Resentful of the culture. And so I can tell you that raising Binti Han, like I tell her, Habibti, you can have shakta and sriracha. Like you can have both. Like, why not? The fullness and the richness of foods from all over the world. It's not one or the other. Okay, hatena hummus on, not pita bread, but hatena hummus on regular bread. Tayyib, this is how we roll. There's nothing wrong with that. This is where it's instilling pride in every layer of where they come from. Yet if we keeping our kids in a box and they're living out west in totally different culture, and we're saying, no, we're an Arab, we have to stick with this and this rigidity, the children, and this is what we're seeing, there's a backlash. And there's a good reason for backlash, because parents are not listening to what their experience is. I think some parents are doing a great job, don't get me wrong. But that assimilation, when you keep your kids living, and then the kids will say, well, why didn't you raise us back home if this is how you are? And then the parents get mad at them when the question is valid. So for Arab living in the diaspora, I want to validate home is nowhere and everywhere all at the same time. And so the truth is, home is in you now. It's in you. How do you create home within you? And wherever you go, you're bringing your lineage, your ancestors, your jokes, your hospitality, and the way you say yalla, leaving a party, 5 times, you're bringing all of that with you. So you are the home that you create for you, no matter where you are. But first, it takes an understanding of what that means to you. And that takes self-exploration, awareness, where you get triggered with the microaggressions. Any trigger leads you to healing. Okay? So that's all I have. Being together, those of us in the diaspora, I feel less alone every time I go on these lives and I watch people's comments and I think, gosh, there's so many of us out there that I don't need to explain myself. You don't need to explain yourself. We just inherently understand. But how do we work together and honor one another's path and help each other bring ourselves back home? And that's with compassion, love, and kindness. All right. Mira, that's all we have for today, part 2.
Yay. That was great. Thank you so much.
All right. Are there any questions? We have a good 2 minutes left.
Yeah, we have Nadine. She said, how about providing alternatives to the holidays we don't celebrate, like Halloween?
What do you mean?
You were talking about holidays and you said we can celebrate different holidays. She just said, how about providing alternatives to the holidays? And then she gave an example that she does not celebrate Halloween. I think that's what she meant.
Oh, right, because there's this belief in Khaf, like the spirits and bin Khaf. Do you guys have Halloween in Egypt? Is that just an American thing?
Yeah.
Is Halloween just an American thing?
Yeah, it's not in Egypt because of exactly what you said. They would be like, oh, bin khaf, bin khaf.
Bin Khaf, the spirits and it's interesting. And then with Latino cultures like Dia de los Muertos, right? That's coming up this weekend. Where they honor that and the dressing up. And so it's interesting how different cultures interpret it. The only thing I can say is that if it's important to your children, I can't tell you what to do in your own family. However, you may want to just validate for your kids that we may not do Halloween. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean, you may not, but you may want to explain to them why. And if they want to do Halloween in the future, they could do that when they're older. But you don't want to tell them no. You just say, well, not now, later. If you want to celebrate Halloween, they'll have the best adult costumes and they'll have fun. But you may want to explain to your children, I know it's hard. However, these are our beliefs. And if that's not your belief, and if it doesn't make sense to you, you want to affirm that for them, because that goes back to this assimilation. You may not understand why your family has these beliefs. They may not make sense to you at all. And as a parent, you may just want to explain to them, I know it doesn't make sense to you. This is our beliefs, and you're free to choose what you want later in life, which as a parent can, and let me tell you, that child's going to be like, thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. I think I'm going to hang around a little bit more, besides moving to another country because they want to get away from you. I'm punchy today.
But that's so true.
Yeah. Let's see. I see a cool comment. Well, thank you, Lutfi. I appreciate you. I'm glad you're here. Thank you, Nadine, for the question. John had a question on TikTok that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
How do you experience raising children differently from your motherland compared to the USA? Well, my daughter is second generation. So here's an interesting point. Growing up in the US with immigrant parents that immigrated in the 50s, when I went back home, Palestine, at 13, 14, I was shocked that the Banat can talk to boys, Rahu al-Nadi, they're playing Ma'bad. Amar for America, would they let us do that? And then I'm thinking, they're more progressive over there. I said to my parents, I said, how come back home the Banats can go out and do things we can't? So you have to, raising children differently from the motherland compared to the US, like it depends on the family's integration and assimilation. And it depends generationally, like where they're at and how open or closed the family system is. So raising children here in the US, it's very different for Binti because she has all the freedom she wants. I give her, and my family, when I was raising her, they were like, yeah, hey, what's going, she's amazing. Because when you see your children with autonomy and love, then they embrace the culture in a very different way. So I raised her to have her own thoughts and beliefs. And then if she wants to come around, I mean, unless it's harming somebody, I tell her, believe what you want. But if you're going to harm someone or move in the world that's going to be not nice, then I have a problem. Outside of that, do what you need to do for you. And so I've raised her with the American values of independence and autonomy. But I also emphasized to her the importance of our Arab culture of we are responsible for each other in the sense of uplifting one another, or at a minimum, not causing harm. And so she understands the collective ideology is geared towards support, but yet her autonomy as a soul, as a spirit, as a being supersedes. If she's not at peace, then the collective is not at peace. So raising your children here in the US, I can tell you, So many Arab are so afraid of all the dangers of El American, and our kids are going to be screwed up. Guess what? They're doing everything behind your back. At least give them the freedom to talk to you about it. That's what creates safety, not keeping them so stuck that the children are going to do what they're going to do, irrespective of culture. Let's see. Aziza said her hometown, Ames, Iowa. The city started decorating for Muslim religion. Awesome. That's what we're talking about. Can we celebrate one another and not be afraid? I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Aziza. Quincy said, I'm so lost and not grounded in my late 30s. Is it too late? It's never too late. Never too late. I can tell you I'm 54 years old and I'm just beginning to come into the groove of all of this, thanks to this community, actually. I learned so much about myself. And it's never too late to create awareness, to find your grounding, to discover who you are, to peel the layers, because your light never left you. What you're doing, even at your 30s, maybe in your late 30s, this is the perfect time for you to explore. This is the perfect time for you to, because now you have some life behind you. Sorry, everyone's calling me. It's almost 9. Okay, so anything else before we go?
No, I think we went through most of the comments. Thank
All
you
right.
for everything you talked about.
Thank you, everyone. Nawar, the light in me sees the light in you. And let us remember to look within, find your home. The home is within you. Gently explore that for you. And if you need any support around that, there's the Arab Therapist Directory. This community is always here to support you in that. I wish you all the very best in what you do. And I'll see you next week, Wadih Wednesday. Thank you, Mita. You're the best. See you guys. Have a good one.